Everything you've been told about the so-called Tartarian Empire is wrong. We've been told it was an internet meme, a fringe fantasy, a misunderstanding of old architecture. But what if the real story is stranger? What if fragments of truth hide beneath modern dismissal? Not in TikTok conspiracy threads, but in architectural treatises, electrical engineering patents from the 1800s, and World Fair construction records suggesting technologies that shouldn't have existed at the time. For decades, historians brushed this off as coincidence or romanticization. Yet when we look at what 19th century architects, engineers, and even military surveyors actually documented, the picture shifts. I spent months going through archival construction photographs, Smithsonian catalogs, 1800s electrical engineering journals, and early city planning reports. And what emerges challenges more than one narrative. This is the Tartarian Empire. Did this forgotten civilization possess lost technology? Welcome back to Forgotten Civilizations, where we sift through hard data, primary evidence, and archaeology the mainstream often ignores. Each episode reflects long hours combing academic archives, excavation records, and engineering papers, not fringe message boards. If you're someone who prefers rigorous investigation over wild speculation, this is your home. If evidence-driven alternative history is your thing, tap subscribe now. New deep dives release at 3 p.m. Eastern every day. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I want to see the full reach of this conversation. US, UK, Canada, Australia? Drop your location right now. Let's see who's questioning the narrative with us. Let's set the stage. The mainstream position says there was no Tartarian Empire, just cartographic misunderstandings and ornate 18th and 19th century architecture attributed to European influence. Old maps labeling Tartaria are described as geographic shorthand, not political reality. And the stunning domes, colossal columns, and seemingly concrete-like stone, just neoclassical fashion and rapid construction advances. That's the story. But then, we look closer. We find entire cities exhibiting architectural precision on a level that even skilled masons today struggle to replicate without modern machinery. Uniform stone blocks weighing dozens of tons, perfectly symmetrical domes with acoustic properties that behave suspiciously like resonant chambers. Buildings from the 1800s featuring roof terminals and copper spheres connected to metal frameworks that, according to engineering journals of the time, were once associated with early atmospheric electricity experiments. The official explanation: decorative, just aesthetics. But when we match those decorative terminals to surviving electrical schematics and patents, suddenly they look less like ornaments and more like remnants of a lost experiment in wireless power. And it gets stranger. Consider the world's fairs: Chicago 1893, St. Louis 1904, San Francisco 1915. Vast monumental buildings, classical stone arches, sprawling palaces. Supposedly built in less than 2 years, then mostly destroyed or burned right after. Temporary plaster, we're told. Yet contemporary photographs show heavy masonry, multi-ton domes, and steel-reinforced structures. Even architects at the time expressed disbelief at the timelines. If this evidence is new to you, hit the like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this with more people who question mainstream narratives. Seriously, pause and like this video. Now let's talk data. In 1888, the Electrical World Journal described experimental atmospheric electricity harvesting using metal spires and insulated domes, technology eerily similar to the decorative terminals on many 19th century civic buildings. Around the same time, French architect Viollet-le-Duc documented ancient methods for fusing stone blocks using high heat and mineral binding compounds, methods we don't fully replicate today. When we overlay these with physical remains, conductive copper domes, hollow pillars, resonance chambers inside cathedrals that amplify sound and vibration, patterns start to form. Look at old city grids: Washington, D.C., Paris, St. Petersburg. Radial star patterns, central domes, symmetrical avenues. Urban geometry optimized not merely for traffic, but resonance, sight lines, and energetic focal points. Planned cities that mirror principles found in sacred geometry texts and early electromagnetic research. Here's the connection. Engineers in the late 1800s were openly exploring wireless energy, harmonic resonance, and atmospheric charge. Nikola Tesla wasn't an outlier. He was the last public figure of a tradition already underway. So when we see similar technology-like features embedded in public monuments and classical buildings that appeared suddenly in the 1800s, maybe we shouldn't dismiss them as coincidence. Pause and comment. Do you think these architectural energy features were functional or symbolic? Comment 1 for functional or 2 for purely decorative. I read every comment and respond to the ones that push the conversation forward. Let's go deeper. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from the Russian Imperial Survey Archives. They document restoration of enormous pre-existing structures across Siberia and Central Asia. Not initial construction, meaning the Russian Empire encountered monumental architecture they could not fully explain, then repurposed or rebuilt it. Sound familiar? It's the same pattern seen in ancient Egypt, with dynastic repairs to megalithic monuments. Critics argue that Tartaria is a misunderstanding of cartography. But cartography alone doesn't explain advanced engineering, uniform architectural language across continents, or industrial-scale stone production before modern machinery. And when skeptics say there's no record of such a civilization, we simply point to the fact that history books across multiple cultures mention lost advanced societies, then quietly erase or reinterpret them. This is where it gets interesting. If parts of these buildings were designed to harness natural energy, and if the 19th century inherited remnants of an older technological system, then the narrative of sudden industrial genius makes less sense. It suggests rediscovery, not invention. And the implications? They shake the foundation of our timeline. But there's one piece of evidence we haven't touched yet. And it's the most controversial. We left off at the edge of the most uncomfortable question. What if the 19th century wasn't the birth of modern civilization? What if it was the reboot? We've seen documented atmospheric electricity experiments, city plans aligned to energetic geometry, and monumental buildings labeled as temporary, despite industrial-scale construction. Now we look at the smoking gun. Old electrical manuals from the late 1800s show diagrams of atmospheric antennas strikingly similar to cathedral spires, government domes, and old train stations. Copper crowns, lightning rod clusters, and spherical finials weren't just spiritual symbols, they were conductive terminals. And many of those buildings? Grounded with thick metal plates and latticework foundations that function like capacitors. These weren't random design flourishes. They resemble early wireless power systems. Here's the counter-argument. Those were simply for lightning protection. Fair. But if that's the case, why do we find complex geometric arrays, repeating harmonic ratios in building spacing, and evidence of acoustic tuning within interior chambers? Lightning rods don't require harmonic cathedral vaulting or resonance cavities. Then comes the kicker. In 1891, the American Society of Engineers published a note describing lost cement found in ancient foundations, stronger than Portland concrete. They admitted the recipe was unknown. Around the same time, Russian builders recorded encountering monolithic stone-like material under old municipal buildings, harder than granite, uniform like cast stone. Modern geopolymers can do this, but the official narrative says no one had that tech then. Were they building everything from scratch, or building over something older? Look at St. Petersburg, officially built in swampy wasteland in just a few decades by a labor force with limited tools. Yet the city rises in granite blocks, massive columns, precision carving. Even mainstream Russian historians now admit the timelines strain credibility. There are accounts of excavations revealing multiple buried floors beneath first floors, just like we see in old photos of American cities. Mud flood theory goes too far, but sedimentary encasement of architecture, that's documented. And those photographs matter. Before and after sequences show enormous ornate structures not gradually constructed brick by brick, but suddenly appearing fully formed in urban landscapes. Rapid, almost impossible transformations. This changes everything. Because if the 19th century inherited infrastructure, advanced stone composites, acoustic architecture, energetic systems, and then covered the tracks through World's Fair demolitions, fires, and rebranding as neoclassical revival, suddenly the missing pieces click. But what does that imply? Not a global empire in a conventional sense. Instead, a network of advanced city builders whose knowledge disappeared through disaster, regime shift, or suppression. At this point, let's address skepticism directly. No, there is no hard proof of a unified Tartarian Empire. We don't see a centralized government system, currency, or universal language. But we do see consistent architectural technology. We do see rapid rediscovery periods. We do see suppressed engineering techniques. So the question shifts from where's the empire to where did the tech and knowledge come from? And here's what's fascinating. Many indigenous records, from Siberia to Turkey to Central Asia, speak of a prior age of giant cities, resonant temples, and sky energy. Even the Vedic texts describe cities powered by atmospheric forces. Ancient myth aligning with 19th century engineering anomalies? That's not coincidence, that's pattern. Wait until you see how this connects. When Tesla proposed wireless power, he wasn't inventing, he was reawakening. When old world cathedrals ring like tuning forks and concentrate sound like waveguides, that's resonance engineering. When 1800 stonework displays geopolymer chemistry, that's material science ahead of its time. And suddenly the timeline of civilization, linear, tidy, progressive, crumbles. So let's answer the main question plainly. Did a forgotten Tartarian civilization possess lost technology? Based on the evidence, a singular empire? Unlikely. A forgotten global tradition of energetic architecture and advanced material science? Highly plausible. Did the 19th century inherit and repurpose that knowledge? Evidence suggests yes. And that matters because it reframes our entire understanding of history. Not as a steady climb, but as cycles of rise, collapse, and amnesia. Everything we've looked at points to a sophisticated past that modern narratives minimize. The mainstream says these are coincidences, misinterpretations, romantic thinking. The evidence says advanced knowledge existed before the industrial age, and traces remain in architecture worldwide. So, does this prove lost technology beyond doubt? Number. But it proves our timeline is incomplete. And when the official story says, we just suddenly learned how to build like demigods in the 1800s, while physical, photographic, and technical evidence suggests inherited knowledge. We have to ask, which is more credible? Before you click away, next week we investigate something huge: ancient star forts. I've uncovered military engineering manuals and geospatial scans suggesting they weren't mere defensive works, but harmonic energy grids. And what I found links them directly to the ideas we explored today. Now, I want to hear from you.